When you live your life on dollars, your life gets more expensive, period. If there is a money that only goes down, why do I own any of it? It was really first principle thinking. If the dollar only goes down over time, why do I own any? And if Bitcoin only goes up over time, why don't I own as much as I can? I think Bitcoin has this cyclical behavior around halvings where it goes through supply shock, it goes into price discovery. And I think 250,000 on the low side over the next year, and on the high side where this administration is bullish, it's pro-Bitcoin, it's supportive, and it's actually becoming a holder of the asset, I think $1 million is more than reasonable.
Jack Mallers begins by highlighting a critical reality: the persistent decline of the U.S. dollar's purchasing power. Over the last century, the dollar has steadily lost value due to its inherent ability to be printed in infinite quantities. This debasement directly impacts the cost of living. Housing, groceries, and fuel prices rise relentlessly, both in the short term and over decades. In contrast, Bitcoin operates on a fixed supply model, fundamentally reversing this trend. As Mallers points out, essential goods and services measured in Bitcoin have become cheaper over time. This makes Bitcoin an ideal reserve asset for preserving and growing wealth in the long term. Mallers provides bold price predictions for Bitcoin based on its cyclical market behavior. He envisions scenarios where Bitcoin reaches $250,000 on the low end and $1 million or more in a bullish environment. These predictions hinge on increasing adoption, favorable regulatory developments, and the potential for governments to hold Bitcoin as a strategic reserve.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
When you live your life on dollars, your life gets more expensive, period. Housing gets more expensive, groceries get more expensive, gas gets more expensive. And that's both in the short term, what we've seen over the last few years, and over the last century. In other words, the purchasing power of the dollar has done nothing but go down. And the reason for that is because you can print infinite amounts of it, it can be debased, and the assets that you need to buy with it get inflated in price. Now, Bitcoin is quite literally the opposite. In its history, all it's done over time is go up. It cannot be printed, therefore it cannot be debased. And in fact, instead of the goods and services that you need to buy going up, it actually goes down in price. So housing price in Bitcoin has gotten cheaper. Groceries in Bitcoin has gotten cheaper. Gas in Bitcoin has gotten cheaper. And so I think Bitcoin as a reserve asset to store your capital is a winner. It's obviously better than fiat currency. And so what I did personally is I asked myself the question, how can I live a life without inflation? If there is a money that only goes down, why do I own any of it? It was really first principle thinking. If the dollar only goes down over time, why do I own any? And if Bitcoin only goes up over time, why don't I own as much as I can? And that's what I did. Listen, I don't consider myself a short-term trader. I believe in Bitcoin's long-term. Listen, financial markets like certainty. Another way to put that is they don't like uncertainty. So going into one of the most uncertain elections, I think financial markets, there's a lot of capital on the sidelines. It didn't surprise me that Bitcoin didn't want to move until it got a result. Going into the election, remind you, people didn't know if whoever won or lost, if we were going to actually get a final result, if there was going to be marching and protests and revolting, and if anyone was going to concede to being the loser. I think such a landslide victory and such a decisive win for Trump gave the market a lot of certainty, and it acted on that certainty. That is unquestionable. That's just data. That's just math. Now, whether it's Powell or Putin or Trump or new chairmen, I think the story here is Bitcoin is a good idea. What do I mean by that? Having a neutral money accessible to everyone in the world, inclusive where everyone has access, that no one can print, no one can debase, it's infinitely divisible, it's transportable digitally. That's just a good idea. It's a good idea. It's a revolutionary idea. It's an idea that helps all. And that's what I think the story of Bitcoin is. It's helping the US government. It's helping families, individuals, corporations, and Michael Saylor. It's helping Russia. It's helping potentially the Fed. So I think the story here is what Bitcoin's trying to achieve is a good idea. And the measure of its value is it achieving that? And I think it is. It's been 15 years and it continues to do so. So that's the main takeaway. I'm happy to get into any of those subtopics in detail, but to me, Bitcoin's just a really, really good idea that's working. The government is actively debasing and printing. If you wanted me to price Bitcoin in houses or in gold bars, I would give you a tighter range. But these worthless pieces of paper that they keep printing, it's difficult for me to predict. I think the high level, though, is listen, if we come out and we see the US government build a Bitcoin strategic reserve and say this asset is important, it's meaningful, it's technology, it's growth, and it's actually strong America, and it's going to give the world confidence in the future of this country and our future promises, which I consider our debt, then I think you can easily see $1 million Bitcoin. Even with the pressures against Bitcoin that we've seen in Operation Choke Points and in poor regulation, I still think Bitcoin would hit 250,000. Mind you, these were predictions before the election. These are not updated predictions. So I think Bitcoin has this cyclical behavior around halvings where it goes through supply shock, it goes into price discovery. And I think 250,000 on the low side over the next year, and on the high side where this administration is bullish, it's pro-Bitcoin, it's supportive, and it's actually becoming a holder of the asset, I think $1 million is more than reasonable. If we want more gold, if the gold price 10x's, if for whatever reason demand surges, we can get more. Gold is in the ground. Gold is on other planets. Elon told us he's going to go to another planet and get a bunch more gold if we need him to. If we need more Bitcoin, we can't get any more. And again, that speaks to Bitcoin as a money, not a utility. It speaks to its fact you can't debase it. You can't print it, you can't inflate it. And for that very reason, Bitcoin will outperform, and it's the best way to protect your money, your time, your energy, your effort, your labor. It's the best way to store value from today and into the future. On top of that, consider the fact that it's weightless to hold it. On top of that, consider that it's free and instant to transfer it anywhere in the world. On top of that, consider it's way cheaper to verify its authenticity. On top of that, consider the fact that it could be divided into such small units that could measure a grain of sand or measure the size of a sports franchise. Right. It is the superior monetary asset and monetary good. The last thing I'll say about gold is this. Listen, the fact that gold has to be concentrated at a central party, like a government, like a bank, like a corporation, to achieve final settlement, to achieve transaction finality, ended up being the reason that gold failed. In order for gold, if we were living in a localized economy with 10 people, gold's perfect. I can go to my local butcher, my local grocer, my local tailor, and I can exchange gold coins. If you want to live in an economy, a global one with 8 billion people on the internet, gold didn't work. Because in order for us to facilitate global digital payments, we had to go give our gold to governments, central banks, and corporations for them to achieve the transaction finality. The one very interesting insight about Bitcoin is it's not only a monetary asset, it's also a monetary network. Bitcoin achieved the impossible, which is transaction finality without a middleman, without a central party. And so it's for that very reason as well that Bitcoin can scale to the economy we live in today without the counterparty risk necessary of a central bank, a corporation, or a government. Is that governments only own 2, 3, 4% of this asset. The rest of this asset is owned by the public and the people, and it's working. And so for all of those reasons, I think Bitcoin is intended and designed and engineered to solve gold's shortcomings. Bitcoin is a man-made asset. It's an engineered asset. The story of humanity is engineering a better world. And I think that's absolutely and literally what Bitcoin is. And for all of those reasons, I think Bitcoin is going to take gold's lunch.
Mallers envisions a future where Bitcoin replaces inefficient monetary practices. As society moves away from using real estate, equities, or gold as makeshift stores of value, Bitcoin's advantages become undeniable. Its ability to seamlessly integrate into a digital economy with global reach ensures that it can scale where traditional assets cannot. Mallers frames Bitcoin as an engineered solution to humanity's monetary challenges. It embodies the spirit of innovation, offering a better way to store and transfer value without reliance on centralized authorities. He believes Bitcoin represents the next chapter in humanity's story of engineering a better world.
It's a huge step for Bitcoin to get acknowledgement from the chair of the biggest central bank in the world, from this Federal Reserve, the US dollar effectively. I think his comments can be interpreted as this. The size of the market that Bitcoin's going after, I measured on my own calculations, is about $900 trillion. And that's the amount of wealth that's stored in assets. So that's a gold, other precious metals, art collectibles, equities, real estate. It's about $900 trillion worth of wealth. And I think what he's saying is, listen, nobody uses the US dollar as a savings account. Nobody stores their wealth in the US dollar. People use equities, real estate, precious metals, art. These are the assets people have monetized to persist and store their wealth, and Bitcoin is a competitor to that. And I would agree with that. I really, really would. I think Bitcoin is demonetizing these instruments where people are going from owning 10 homes where they only live and consume in one to, I might as well just own the one home I actually use and sell my 9 and buy Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is better at persisting and storing wealth. Bitcoin is outperforming, and your other 9 homes weren't actually intended to be a monetary unit to store value. They were intended for you to live in them. And so I think society has monetized other assets in their life out of desperation to persist and store wealth. And now we've engineered a solution that solves that problem. And what Jerome is saying is, listen, we're still going to have the dollar as a transactional currency in this country. But if people are going to speculate and use Bitcoin to store and persist their wealth as opposed to real estate instead of an index basket of equities, instead of a gold bar, that seems reasonable to me. And in fact, those that have been have outperformed those that haven't. That's how I interpreted the comments. And I think it's an incredible step for Bitcoin because it's being acknowledged at its biggest stage to $2 trillion asset. And at this point, I think the conversation is how impactful and how important can Bitcoin be as opposed to when is it going to fail? I think we're making that and we're crossing that chasm. I think Bitcoin continues to be the best performing asset in the history of mankind, the best performing asset over the last 15 years, and the best performing asset right now for a very simple concept, but it's profound. Is that it's the scarcest, it's the hardest. And when people say Bitcoin's hard, they're referencing how hard it is to make more. That's the key term and the key phrase. And what's really interesting to understand is traditionally in markets, with more demand comes more supply. Meaning, if everyone in the world wanted an iPhone, Apple will increase the iPhone supply and make sure everyone in the world becomes a customer. If everyone in the world wants McDonald's cheeseburger, McDonald's will increase the supply of cheeseburgers and meet the market demand. Now, if everyone in the world wants a Bitcoin, it's actually the only thing that you can own where we can't make any more, where we cannot increase the supply. And for that very reason, Bitcoin demands a higher price. New supply comes from the market. New supply comes from those that have it. More demand demands a higher price. And it's the scarcest and it's the hardest to make more of. In fact, it's the only thing you can own where we can't make any more of it. So it's for that very reason that it is the most performant asset in human history and will continue to be. And it's simple. It's a straightforward idea, but it's a very profound idea. And that's what I think we're seeing. And that's what we've been seeing since it was invented.
Ack Maller's vision for Bitcoin is both profound and practical. He sees it as a transformative asset that addresses the inefficiencies of fiat currencies and gold while offering a new paradigm for storing and preserving wealth. Bitcoin's unique qualities, scarcity, decentralization, and digital accessibility, make it a cornerstone of the future financial landscape. As we witness Bitcoin's continued adoption and success, the question is no longer if it will succeed, but how transformative its impact will be. Whether you're an investor, a skeptic, or someone curious about the future of money, Bitcoin's story is one worth understanding.
Please like and subscribe my channel.